the treasure, you're the prize. Oh, all I want is you, Jesus. All I want is you. You are the refuge I run to. You are the fire that leads me through the night. I'll follow you anywhere. There's a million reasons to trust you. Nothing to fear, for you are by my side. I'll follow you anywhere. Follow you anywhere. Oh, I'll follow you anywhere. Oh, wherever you lead me, whatever it costs me, all I want is you, Jesus. All I want is you. Wherever you lead me, whatever it costs me, all I want is you, Jesus. All I want is you. Wherever you lead me, wherever it costs me, all I want is you, Jesus. All I want is you. You are the refuge I run to. You are the fire that leads me through the night. I'll follow you anywhere. There's a million reasons to trust you. Nothing to fear, for you are by my side. I'll follow you anywhere. Follow you anywhere. Oh, I'll follow you anywhere. Oh, I'll follow you anywhere.
Hey students, we're here for the Friday recap. I hope you've been reading along with us. If you haven't, now's a great time to join in this Friday recap. That's kind of the purpose of it. One of the purposes of it is to just, talk about what we've read this week, so that if you want to jump in, you'll kind of be caught up and you'll know what's going on whenever you jump into the story with us. But those of you that have been reading, this is a good time to just sit, reflect, pause, take a moment and breathe and look at the things that we've been reading as we're going through the Bible. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to talk about what we've read this week in week 17 of the Word series. We started in Song of Solomon. If you were reading Song of Solomon, you were probably like, wait, this is in the Bible? Song of Solomon is one of those things that can be let's be honest, it can be awkward to read, right? It can be a little bit weird, kind of trying to figure out what the reason for reading that is, but it's a beautiful picture of the relationship between a husband and a wife. And it shows us that beautiful covenant relationship between a man and a woman, and it shows us what that intimacy looks like, and that it is God glorifying, that God gave us that relationship to glorify Him and to be a picture of His relationship with us. And so that was Song of Solomon 7 and 8 on Monday, and then we jumped into 1 Kings 11 and 12 on Tuesday. And so starting in 11, it's when Solomon has some issues with the Lord, right? He has some problems. We see he makes some decisions. He defies what the Lord said. There were certain people that Solomon should not have married, and he didn't care. He married 700 women. He had 300 concubines, and he had a bunch of marriages that were not honoring the Lord. And this is a moment where we can also take a pause, break, and just say, just because the Bible doesn't condemn something that it has already condemned doesn't change the fact that it's wrong. So not only did he marry the wrong people, but he married too many people, right? We see in Genesis 2 that marriage is one man and one woman for one lifetime. Solomon had 700 wives. And so even just that fact right there alone is sin. But he was marrying people that didn't worship the same God, marrying people that had different views than he was. He was not equally yoked with these women. And so God ends up punishing Solomon. And he tells, a few chapters ago, he had told him, if you walk in my ways, everything's going to be good. And if you don't, then things aren't going to be good for you. And we see that come to pass. God ends up taking Israel from his descendants. And he leaves Judah with them. So they remain in control of the house of Judah because God had already prophesied. He'd already told them that the descendants of David, the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would have a household that ruled forever, right? And we'd end up seeing Jesus come from that. So Jesus came from the household of Judah. So Solomon's family stays in control of Judah, of the household of Judah, but they lose Israel as a whole. And so that's in chapter 11, and then in chapter 12 we just start to see where that kingdom is divided. And there's people going in all kinds of different ways in Israel. It's turning from the Lord. So that was on Tuesday, 11 and 12. And then we read 16, 29 through 34. Just a short piece of chapter 16 on Wednesday that just shows us a setup of one of the kings in Israel, a guy named Ahab, and his wife Jezebel. And these were not good people. They made some poor decisions. And so we just see them come into power at the end of chapter 16. And then we read chapter 17, where Elijah predicts a drought. He prophesies that a drought's going to come, and then God begins to provide for Elijah in some awesome ways. We see, God tells him to go down to this creek, and God's going to give him water from the creek, and there's birds that are going to bring food to him, and that happens until the creek dries up, and God says, all right, now you're going to go find this widow, and she's going to give you food. When he finds her, she's at the point of, she's about to cook her final meal and die. Like she's about to starve to death. She has no more means to provide for her family. But Elijah asks her for some food, and God tells her, hey, look, just do this, and you're not going to run out of food until this drought's over. So she does, and the jar of flour continues to be filled by the Lord, and God provides for Elijah there as well. So then we read 1 Kings 18 and 19 on Thursday, where God has Elijah confront Ahab. And we see this beautiful, awesome, crazy story of Elijah going to confronting the prophets of Baal and having them all come down. And he basically says, look, let's see whose God is the real God. I want you to build an altar. I'm going to build an altar. And y'all are going to have some time to just let your God bring down fire from heaven. And so that's what happens. They build this altar. Elijah starts making fun of them because fire never falls down from Baal, their God. And then Elijah finally calls down fire from heaven from the one true God. And he prays to God. He says, God, look, please bring down this fire. I want them to see who you are. I want them to see the truth of who you are. And God rains down fire that consumes the altar. It consumes what was on the altar. It consumes the water that was all around the altar. Like God, this massive spectacle in the way that only God could do it, right? And so we see, and then we see judgment on those prophets of Baal. They are all killed. And then rain comes. We'd had that drought that we read about a couple chapters ago, and then rain ends up coming from a cloud the size of a hand that they see coming up out over the water and coming over Israel and bringing rain to the land. But then in chapter 19, Elijah gets kind of scared because Jezebel, wife of Ahab, says, look, you're going to die. By tomorrow, you're going to be dead. So he takes off and he flees. He gets scared and he runs away and he hides. But the Lord speaks to him. And this is the passage where we see the fire and the earthquake and all these different things that God did not speak through those, but he spoke through the whisper. And he tells him, gives him a charge of what he needs to do. That he needs to go back, declare what God's about to do in the land. And so he does. He brings Elisha along as his disciple, as his next prophet. So then we read chapters 21 and 22. And in chapter 21, Elijah is ready to go. He's fired up again. He's not scared. He's ready to go do what the Lord tells him to do. So he goes to Ahab and he tells Ahab what's coming, that the Lord's about to bring down judgment on him. And Ahab repents. He turns and he cries out to the Lord. He repents of his wicked ways. He humbles himself, and the Lord tells Elijah, "Have you seen Ahab? Has humbled himself before me. Because he has humbled himself before me, I will not bring the disaster in his days, but in his son's days. I will bring the disaster upon his house." So Ahab then, as he continues forward, he's been spared. He's approached by the king of Judah, King Jehoshaphat. And King Jehoshaphat comes to him and says, "Hey, we've got some land that's supposed to be ours. Will you come along and fight with us to get this land back?" And they decide that they want to inquire of some prophets to see if this is something that needs to happen. And all these prophets just love speaking what King Ahab wants to hear. They tell him, "Yeah, you need to do it. This is going to be great. You're going to win." And finally, King Jehoshaphat, kind of with some discernment, says, is there anybody that's going to say anything negative? Because it kind of seems like they're all telling you what you want to hear. And so they call this prophet Micaiah, who was warned. They tell him, "Hey, you're going to want to speak positively to King Ahab." Micaiah says, "Look, I'm just going to tell what the Lord says." And he tells them, "This is not a good idea. This is not what you're going to want to do. You're going to die." And Ahab locks Micaiah up in prison. And Micaiah tells him, "Hey, if you come back, if you return to me, then you'll know that I was wrong. But I don't think you're going to return to me. You're not going to make it back here." And that's what happens. King Ahab dies in battle, and then we're left at the end of Kings knowing that we've got King Jehoshaphat in charge of Judah, and King Ahaziah is now going to be reigning in Israel. So this week we've got one more day left. We're going to read Second Kings 2 tomorrow. And so we won't talk about that. I want you guys to read that tomorrow, and we will see you guys on Sunday, and we'll continue through this all next week. Y'all have a great weekend.